These mafiosi lived large, and their deaths were big news. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 infamous mob hits. For this list, we're focusing on the mafia's most high-profile hits. To narrow things down, we're keeping things limited to hits that happened in the United States. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to check out the full song at the link below. Number 10. Sam Giancana.
The only name you needed to know. And when Sam took the reins, all hell broke loose all over the world.
Over the years, this Chicago mobster has been linked to CIA efforts to assassinate Fidel Castro during the Kennedy presidency. At the time of his death, Momo was 67 years old and known for his gambling and refusal to spread the wealth.
Giancana's greatest strength was not his violent nature, but his gift for making money. It was Giancana who struck fear into the electricians' union so that every slot machine in Chicago paid the mob.
In 1974, he even relocated to Cuernavaca, Mexico to avoid legal hassles.
Large payments were certainly made to powerful men in Mexico City to protect him, to provide sanctuary.
But a life of crime caught up to Giancana on June 19, 1975, as he was gunned down while cooking sausage and peppers. Aside from those responsible, nobody knows who killed Sam the Cigar, and conspiracy theories persist. Number 9. Joe Gallo.
I work everyone. I make fun of blacks. I make fun of Jews. I work gypsies. I work Italians. Well, not those Italians. No. It's okay, Joe. I got the money. Don't shoot.
Known as Crazy Joe, this New York mafioso was raised in Brooklyn, New York.
He's vicious, he's a psychopath, and he scared the heck out of everybody.
Joey Gallo got off on anger, and he got off on power.
During the 50s, he joined the Profaci crime family, working as a hitman and extortionist. But eventually, Joey started a war with the gang and kidnapped Joe Profaci's brother-in-law, Joseph Magliacco.
The boys look like we're going uptown.
Yes, sir.
Hey, we're in business. Tomorrow is here.
That is not something a crime lord forgets. On April 7, 1972, Crazy Joe celebrated his 43rd birthday in Manhattan. Later that night, Gallo was ambushed and shot at Umberto's Clam House, and later died at Beekman Downtown Hospital. Number 8. Anthony Spilotro.
How did Nicky collect?
Every week, I just mostly
Don't ask.
This Chicago gangster was the inspiration for Joe Pesci's character in the 1995 film Casino. And if you're familiar with the Martin Scorsese classic, then you know that Anthony Spilotro suffers a horrific fate. In 1963, the Ant was officially a made man, and in 1976, he established the Hole in the Wall gang. Spilotro eventually became suspected of skimming allegations at the mob's Las Vegas operations. He swiftly disappeared in 1986 and was later found buried with his brother Michael.
9 days later, a farmer found the grave. DNA from the crime scene helped build the case 21 years later.
Police suspected Spilotro may have been involved in almost 24 murders. Number 7. Jack McGurn.
Maybe I'm wrong to butt in like this, but the last couple of months I've been doing a little checking up on Moran.
Born Vincenzo Gibaldi, this man ultimately settled in Chicago and began boxing as a teenager.
Think you can handle it, kid? Yes, sir.
By 1923, however, Jack McGurn joined Al Capone's crime organization and became known as the Machine Gun. He's known for slitting the throat of singer Joe E. Lewis and allegedly helping plan the infamous St. Valentines Day Massacre. Exactly 1 day and 7 years after the massacre, McGurn was gunned down in Chicago, and the killers left a telling clue: a Valentine with a poem. Jack McGurn, a Sicilian immigrant, was 33 years old, and his half-brother Anthony DeMori was also murdered 2 weeks later. Number 6. Angelo Bruno. Known as the Gentle Don, this iconic gangster was actually known to avoid violence.
I mean, Bruno, he was just made the new boss of Philadelphia. He took care of everything from Philadelphia to Atlantic City.
For 20 years, Bruno headed the Philadelphia Mafia, but he began making enemies within the organization because of his greed.
London is going to be the Las Vegas of Europe. We need someone to front and someone to muscle for us.
On March 21, 1980, his own underboss, Antonio Caponegro, allegedly had the docile Don killed outside his home on a South Philadelphia street. This did not go over well with the Commission, the Mafia's ruling body, which had not given their okay for the hit. As a result, Bruno's death was immediately avenged, as Caponigro was murdered for ordering his own boss's murder.
I know.
No, you don't know. Wait by the bar, would you?
Number 5. Paul Castellano. For years, Big Paulie was a legend of the New York Mafia.
The question is whether his death will spark a new mafia war in New York or be the end of one.
By 1975, he succeeded Carlo Gambino as the head of the Gambino crime family, and once reportedly put a contract out on an undercover FBI agent. In the mid-80s, Castellano was arrested for racketeering, just as an associate named John Gotti put a deadly plan in motion.
We're hitting Paul. And anyone else who's in the car with him.
On the evening of December 16, 1985, Castellano and his underboss Thomas Bellotti were both gunned down outside Manhattan's Spark Steakhouse, a brazen act that announced a changing of the guard.
I gotta be loyal. Without that, we crumble.
Tell that to Paul Castellano.
Number 4. Carmine Galante.
Carmine Galante. He was head of the Bonanno crime family. Known as the Cigar, he was widely feared for his cruelty.
Born in Harlem to Sicilian immigrants, this man became involved with organized crime before his teenage years. In the 40s, Carmine Galante worked as a hitman and later teamed up with Joseph Bonanno, leader of the Bonanno crime family. After 12 years in prison from 1962 to 1974, Galante attempted to run the drug trade, which greatly disappointed the five families.
In 5 short years, he transformed the fortunes of the U.S. Mafia by leading it into an era of multi-billion-dollar profits and unparalleled violence.
On July 12, 1979, the 69-year-old Galante was murdered in Bushwick, Brooklyn, at Joe and Mary's Italian-American restaurant.
It was such a perfect hit that it entered mafia folklore.
The commission had officially ordered the hit, and Galante famously died with a cigar in his mouth.
The motive for the murder, however, was clear. Galante had become rich through drugs and refused to share his wealth.
Number 3. Albert Anastasia. The American Mafia exists because of this Italian immigrant. In 1919, Albert Anastasia first arrived in the United States and was soon sentenced to death for a 1921 murder. But the Mad Hatter received a new lease on life when several witnesses disappeared. By 1957, Anastasia was a 55-year-old legend in the criminal underworld.
He would not hesitate to resort to violence, whether it was shooting or murdering anybody, just to advance his position.
But the crime boss met a violent end when associates of Carlo Gambino, including the aforementioned Joe Gallo, allegedly murdered Anastasia at a Midtown Manhattan barbershop.
Excuse me, sir, I need to go in the back for a moment.
All right, won't be too long.
Decades later, it remains one of the most aggressive power moves in mob history.
It's not a mob hit where they've taken you in the woods. It's happened right there in the middle of New York City. That's one of the reasons it's iconic. It's so visible.
Number 2. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Along with his friend Albert Anastasia, this Jewish mobster was a founding member of Murder Incorporated.
Bugsy Siegel was one of the main players in Murder Incorporated, which was the enforcement arm of the Lucky Luciano mob.
Benjamin Bugsy Siegel is also responsible for developing a small desert town called Las Vegas.
Take a look at this place, this beautiful place. What I want you to do is take it in. Take a deep breath. Do you smell it? Go on, take a deep breath. What do you smell?
Born in Brooklyn, Bugsy began a life of crime as a young man, and his organizational skills led him all the way out west.
At age 14, he started his first gang. He would go around and intimidate pushcart peddlers by telling them they needed to pay him for protection. When they questioned what they needed protection from, he would throw kerosene on their pushcarts, set them on fire.
Unfortunately for Siegel, his brash demeanor and lavish lifestyle made him many enemies, and one of them showed up at his Beverly Hills home on June 20th, 1947.
So I think the decision was made that the only way to tell him he was finished was to finish him.
As Bugsy read the LA Times inside, an unknown assassin fired through a window, putting 2 bullets through the gangster's head. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. the St. Valentines Day Massacre.
This is a raid! Everybody, against the wall! You know the drill.
Throughout history, individual mob hits have symbolized a transfer of power. In 1929, Al Capone made a major move by taking out several members of an Irish gang led by George Bugs Moran. 2 supposed police officers arrived at a North Chicago warehouse and, along with 2 other hitmen, massacred 7 gangsters with Thompson submachine guns and shotguns.
Moran and others pointed the finger at Capone, but Al had an airtight alibi. He was in Florida in a meeting with the district attorney in Miami at the time of the shootings.
A contract killer named Frank Gusenberg survived the attack, but he refused to identify the assassins before passing away hours later. It's the stuff of movies, but it's also a disturbing real-life mob hit that sheds light on the brutality of Prohibition-era America.
All right, you two, let's go. Listen, Buster, you better be kidding. Move. How's flat feet? Wait till you hear about this downtown.
Do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you're a fan of the song playing right now, be sure to check out the music video for it right here.